Hello, everyone. My name is Paula Popovic, and I'm the founder of the Blue Dwarf and the host of its podcast, where we explore the intersection of open source intelligence and cybersecurity, in particular, particularly in the context of digital parenting and youth protection. Before we go any further with the presentation, I would like to take a minute, I cannot give you more, sorry, to read the following disclaimer. Let me know when you finish reading, because I can move on.
Please move on. Yeah.
Okay. What is cybercrime? So, according to United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, cybercrime is defined as offenses committed using computer system or networks, including traditional crimes like fraud and identity theft, and crimes unique to internet, such as hacking, distribution of child sexual abuse material. So, in simple terms, cybercrime is where criminal activity meets digital technology. Sometimes the computer or device is the target, like in the hacking. Other times, the computer is the tool, like in Sextortion, where someone uses a messaging app, fake social media account, or stolen content to threaten or blackmail someone else. Cybercrime takes many forms, from hacking, sextortion, online blackmail, to identity theft, financial scams, child exploitation, and so on. Cybercrime is uniquely difficult because it knows no borders. The victim may be in one country while the offender is in another. Offenders hide behind fake accounts, encryption, and VPN, and they move fast, often before the victim even realizing what's happening. Without strong laws, trained investigators, and international cooperation, these cases slip through cracks. We are not just fighting crime, we are fighting crimes in a space with no border. Now that we define cybercrime, let's talk about how we fight it. That means understanding the differences between legislation and policy. We often hear them used hand in hand, and they play a very different role. So, for example, cybercrime legislation refers to the actual laws, the rules that define what's illegal, like hacking, sextortion, or sharing abusive content. This law gives power to police, prosecutors, and courts to investigate and prosecute offenders. On the other side, we have cybercrime policies. This isn't about punishment, it's about prevention. Policies are strategies and framework that guide how we reduce risk before a crime happens. Through things like digital education, especially in school, safety standards for tech platform, or public awareness for campaign. And because we are talking in Ghana, I will take Ghana as an example. Ghana has the Cybersecurity Act of 2020, which is a legislation. It gives legal authority to prosecute crimes. The child protection framework that we find it in Ghana is a policy. It's designed to help educators, caregivers, and platforms create a safer environment for children. And here's the takeaway. Laws alone aren't enough. To really protect people, especially young people, we need strong laws and smart policies working together. Now, let's look at how different countries approach this and what legal tools they already have in place to tackle sextortion. When we look at the United Kingdom, we see a mature legal system that spent years refining how it handles child safety, both from a criminal law and digital regulation standpoint. First, the Sexual Offences Act 2003 is one of the cornerstone pieces. It makes it illegal to groom a child, to engage in sexual communication with a minor, or to possess or distribute child sexual material, also known as CSAM. Then there's the Online Safety Act, passed in 2023, a landmark shift. For the first time, tech platforms themselves are legally responsible for policing harmful content. So take platforms like Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, and so on. They are legally bound. The Computer Misuse Act. Now, this one is slightly older. He's around since 1990, but still applies. It deals with things like hacking, phishing, taking over someone's account, or impersonating someone online. All tactics that we've seen in grooming and sextortion cases. And finally, the UK GDPR and Data Protection Act of 2018 puts strong safeguard around how children's personal information is collected, stored, and used. This includes things like age verification, parental control, and the right to have all the personal data deleted, all which helps protect children from being profiled or targeted. The key takeaway in here is strong legal frameworks create strong accountability for offenders, for platforms, and for the society. In the European Union, the approach to child online safety rests on two powerful pillars: privacy by design and cross-border enforcement. First, the General Data Protection Regulation, or the big old spooky GDPR, is not just about cookies and consent. It specifically strengthens protection for children, recognizing that they are more vulnerable to manipulation, data harvesting, and profiling. GDPR requires platforms to consider children's best interest from the ground up. This is also called safety by design. But privacy alone isn't enough, and the EU recognized that. So here's EU strategy for more effective fight against child sexual abuse. This strategy pushes for faster removal of CSAM, stronger legal harmonization across all the member states, and for better coordination between police forces, even across borders. Because as we've seen, offenders move online across platforms and across countries in seconds. Laws and investigation need to move just as fast. So the EU model is trying to bridge that gap, protecting children not just through design, but through rapid joint enforcement. In the United States, the legal approach to child sexual abuse is uncompromising, and the penalties reflect that. The Protect Act of 2003 makes it a federal crime to produce, possess, or distribute child sexual abuse material, also known as CSAM. It applies both domestically and internationally, meaning US citizens can be prosecuted even if they engage online outside the country. Then there's the COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. It doesn't deal directly with the abuse, but it sets important limits on what data online service can collect from a user under 13 years of age. And perhaps the most significantly, Title 18, Section 2251 of US Criminal Code allows for very strong sentences, including life imprisonment, for anyone found guilty of producing or trafficking CSAM. So the US approach is clear: harsh penalties, federal enforcement, and child privacy rules that tech companies must follow. The African Union Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection, sometimes called the Malabo Convention, sets minimum standard for how countries should handle data privacy, cybercrimes, and digital rights. It's an important framework because it provides a common foundation, something countries can use to build their own national laws upon. But adoption and enforcement across the continent have been inconsistent. Some countries have signed it and approved the conventions, others have not. Then, the African Charter on the Right and Welfare of the Child. This is a powerful commitment. It obliges every signatory to protect children from all forms of sexual abuse, including offline or online. But again, it relies on national level action. If those protections aren't written into each country's domestic law, or if enforcement agencies aren't trained and resourced, then the promise of the Charter remains just that, a promise. Ghana has taken a meaningful legal step to confront the rising threat of online child exploitation. The Cybersecurity Act of 2020 is a landmark piece of legislation. It criminalized the possession, creation, and distribution of child sexual material, or CSAM, as well as online blackmail and the sharing of intimate content without consent. So, sextortion, revenge porn, and coercive grooming behaviors are prosecutable under Ghana's law. But Ghana didn't stop at lawmaking. The country also developed the Child Online Protection Framework, a practical guide for turning policy into protection. It provides operational guidance for how schools, telecom provider, internet cafe, and public institutions can create safer digital spaces for children. And beyond general cybercrimes, Ghana's legal structure now includes specific provision targeting sextortion, image-based abuse, and child grooming, terms that weren't always well defined in earlier laws. So the legal base is there. The work ahead is to ensure that these laws are widely understood, consistently enforced, and supported by public education so that children and parents know what protection they have. Now that we've seen how different regions are building their legal frameworks around cybercrime, let's zoom in one of the most disturbing and fastest growing form, sextortion. This isn't just a social problem, it's a digital weapon. And yes, it's prosecutable crime. It's at its core, sextortion is online sexual blackmail. Offender uses fake accounts, stolen images, or screen recording to gain trust, then demand explicit images, money, or silence through threats. These acts are typically prosecuted as sexual exploitation, harassment, extortion, or computer misuse, and often overlap with child sexual abuse laws. The main target, children and vulnerable individuals. Many too afraid or ashamed to speak out. Let me explain. In many cases, the goal is financial. Threats to leak images unless money is sent through what's called Momo, M-Pesa, or gift cards. If I mentioned that wrong, I'm really sorry. But in other cases, the goal isn't money. The goal is control, humiliation, and silence. It's not driven by greed, but by cruelty. And in Ghana, this crime is very real. There was a survey, and that survey says 2 out of 10 children in Ghana have received sexual messages or images online. 2 out of 10 children have met someone offline after meeting them online. And what's more disturbing is 27% of children have experienced some form of child sexual exploitation. Out of them, 28.5 are girls and 24.3 are boys. Let that sink in. 28.5 are girls and 24.3 are boys. Offenders don't feel foreign. They speak local languages, use slang, and blend in. Unfortunately, law enforcement doesn't. Cross-border crime moves fast. Legal cooperation doesn't. And that's where offenders thrive. My goal today is simple. Build resilience, teach kids to spot manipulation, not just malware. Push for faster, stronger enforcement, and remind every policymaker and every parent we are not just protecting data, we are protecting lives. Let's look at the case study now. So I would like to start by saying that the name of the offender is not important because I am not here to turn him into headlines or give him any kind of recognition. There is no credit to be given for the horrific acts he committed. What mattered the most is the focused and the deep suffering endured by dozens of children, many just entering adolescence. Targeted, manipulated by someone whom the judge itself said, and I quote, "I do not sense remorse or shame, certainly not at any comforting degree." Despite the conviction and despite a sentence of life imprisonment with minimum 20 years, the harm done cannot be undone. He posed as a teen girl on Snapchat, Instagram, and other platforms. He contacted thousands of children across the borders. He was convicted of 185 offenses involving at least 70 identified child victims in 30 countries. Unfortunately, one of those children, just 12 years old, died by suicide during a live chat with him. And that death led to a landmark manslaughter conviction, believed to be the first case where someone was convicted of manslaughter without ever physically meeting his victim. That's bad. But the real wounds that will never fully heal. So today, I'm not just speaking to fellow cybersecurity professionals, though you are very important. But beyond that, I am also speaking directly to parents, caregivers, and policymakers. Because this isn't just a digital threat, it's a human one. And if we can raise awareness, build better protection, and help authorities move faster, we may stop the next tragedy before it actually begins. Let me tell you, one of the reasons this offender was so successful, even after earlier arrests, is because he impersonated a vulnerable figure. A teenage girl who herself claimed to be struggling with her sexual identity. He didn't just pose as a peer. He posed as someone who seemed to understand and share the same confusion, fear, and question many young girls in the LGBTQ+ community, and not only, might have when they're exploring who they are. His target were often girls between 10 and 13 years old. A particular sensitive stage of development. He chose them precisely because they were exploring identity and perhaps didn't feel safe discussing that with their parents or someone close. That false sense of safe space is where this impersonation was so dangerous, because it opened the door to exploitation disguised as emotional connection. In many cases, it took just a few hours. His victims were sending him explicit images, which he then used to blackmail and coerce them repeatedly in just few hours of talking with him. What started as a trust quickly became a trap. Let's talk not just about how this spread so quickly, but more importantly, why it was so effective. Offenders like this one use a mix of tactics that are both technically smart and psychologically manipulative. He created multiple fake accounts across multiple platforms, often impersonating a teenage girl. But this wasn't just a random identity. It was detailed, emotionally calibrated, and in this case, deeply dangerous. One of the most disturbing elements of this case, it was that he was using the real photos of his victims, pretending that those images were of himself. So those images became the bait to trap new victim. The next victim saw the previous victim without even knowing. Now, think about that, and even as an adult, you might be fooled. For a child, especially one who is vulnerable and questioning their identity, this kind of profile feels not just real, but safe. Add to that automation scripts, time zone cycling to stay active 24/7, and platform hopping across apps kids use daily, plus 167 phones. It becomes clear this wasn't just a fast reach, it was about carefully engineering trust and repeatable manipulation. That's how this spread to 30 countries. And that's why so many children were trapped so quickly. We have laws, as we mentioned before. Ghana has laws. Africa has conventions. The UK, EU, and the US have robust child protection acts. And yet, the cases keep coming. The images keep spreading. The stories get darker. So why aren't these laws working? Why they don't perform at the level they should? Why are children still being exploited online and offline, despite all of these frameworks? The gaps are real, but they are fixable. So first, enforcement is limited. Many officers, prosecutors, and judges still lack training on on crimes like sextortion or how to handle digital evidence. Even when cases are reported, they may stall or never make it to court. Second, awareness is low. Most kids, parents, and teachers don't know what the laws say or how to report an abuse. Victims stay silent out of shame or the fear that nothing will happen. Third, tech platform delay or ignore requests from smaller regions, especially African agencies. Meanwhile, the harm continues. Fourth, cross-border cooperation is too slow. Offenders move faster than the legal system can, And finally, we have no system to track enforcement. Laws are passed, but who is there to check if they are working? That's why the case I just shared today stands out, not just for its tragedy, but for what it proved. Cross-border cooperation can work, but it needs to be the norm, not the exception. Because when the pain travels across border, justice must too. I want to have a clear call to action, divided into 3 groups, but united by one goal: protecting children early, consistently, and fearlessly. First group, parents. Start the conversation early, even if it feels uncomfortable. You might think talking to a 10-year-old about sexuality or online safety is too soon, but I will tell you something. By 12, they will be talking about it online, or even worse, consuming it. The same way you teach your child to avoid strangers in the street, or walk away if something feels wrong in a park, teach them to recognize danger online. Just because they are in front of a computer doesn't mean they are safe. The threat has simply changed shape. Education must include digital survival skills, not just tech fluency. If we are teaching children how to build apps, use AI, we must also teach them how those tools can work against them. Online grooming and exploitation often starts with kindness, attention, and flattery. And if we don't train teachers to spot the sign or equip them with the strategies to intervene, we are leaving children exposed. Let's invest in teacher training, curriculum reform, and digital risk awareness, just as seriously as we invest in STEM, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. The last but not the least, policymaker, government, and tech industry. You are responsible to create and to uphold laws and systems that center the child's best interest always. And to ensure that those laws are not just written, but enforced. Not just in Ghana, not just in Africa, but everywhere. Every child needs to be protected. Us, as IT professionals and technology companies, also carry a critical responsibility. We build the platform where children live, learn, and sometimes fall into danger. So our job is not just to innovate, but to protect, to design with safety in mind, and to respond where harm occurs. If we don't fight together to raise strong, independent, healthy children, we will never have strong, independent, healthy societies. Children are not only the future, they are our present responsibilities. We owe them protection, we owe them safety, and we owe them a system that works before the harm is done. If there is one thing I want you to take from this presentation today is this. Online abuse is not just a distant risk. It's real, it's happening, and it's closer than we think. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a policymaker, or a tech leader, you have a role to play. Talk to your children, train your teacher, strengthen your laws, and never assume that silence means safety. Because behind every statistic, there is a child. And behind every child, there is a chance to intervene, to protect, and to prevent the next tragedy. Thank you for listening, caring, and hopefully acting. And if you want to connect with me, here is my connection detail. Thank you so much.